Good evening and welcome to Third Church of Christ Scientist of New York City. Let's begin with singing hymn number 400. I'll read the entire poem. Ye timid saints, fresh courage take. The clouds ye so much dread are big with mercy and will break in blessings on your head. His mighty purpose ripens fast, unfolding every hour. The bud may have a bitter taste, but sweet will be the flower. Blind unbelief is sure to err and scan his work in vain. God is his own interpreter, and he will make it plain. Hymn number 400. I'll read from the Bible and from the Christian Science textbook, Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, by Mary Baker Eddy. The subject of this evening's readings is unfoldment. The Bible, Ruth. Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. And the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the name of his 2 sons Mahlon and Chilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem, Judah. And they came into the country of Moab and continued there. And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left and her 2 sons. And they took them wives of the women of Moab. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. And they dwelled there about 10 years. And Mahlon and Chilion died also, both of them. And the woman was left of her 2 sons and her husband. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law, that she might return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab how that the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. Wherefore she went forth out of the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they came on the way to return unto the land of Judah. And Naomi said unto her 2 daughters-in-law, Go, return each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you as ye have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant you that ye might find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voice and wept. And they said unto her, Surely we will return with thee unto thy people. And Naomi said, Turn again, my daughters. Why will ye go with me? Are there yet any more sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands? Turn again, my daughters, go your way. And they lifted up their voice and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clave unto her. And she said, Behold, thy sister-in-law is gone back unto her people and unto her gods. Return thou after thy sister-in-law. And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go, and whither thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. When she saw that she was steadfastly minded to go with her, then she left speaking unto her. So they two went until they came to Bethlehem. So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, with her, which returned out of the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem in the beginning of barley harvest. And Naomi had a kinsman of her husband's, a mighty man of wealth, of the family of Elimelech, and his name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabitess said unto Naomi, Let me now go to the field and glean ears of corn, after him in whose sight I shall find grace. And she said unto her, Go, my daughter. And she went and came and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And her hap was to light on a part of the field belonging unto Boaz, who was of the kindred of Elimelech. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said unto the reapers, The Lord be with you. And they answered him, The Lord bless thee. Then said Boaz unto his servant that was set over the reapers, Whose damsel is this? And the servant that was set over the reapers answered and said, It is the Moabitish damsel that came back with Naomi out of the country of Moab. Then said Boaz unto Ruth, Hearest thou not, my daughter? Go not to glean in another field, neither go from hence, but abide here fast by my maidens. Let thine eyes be on the field that they do reap, and go thou after them. Have I not charged the young men that they shall not touch thee? And when thou art athirst, go unto the vessels, and drink of that which the young men have drawn. Then she fell on her face, and bowed herself to the ground, and said unto him, Why have I found grace in thine eyes, that thou shouldest take knowledge of me, seeing I am a stranger? And Boaz answered and said unto her, It hath been fully showed me all that thou hast done unto thy mother-in-law since the death of thine husband, and how thou hast left thy father and thy mother, and the land of thy nativity, and art come unto a people which thou knewest not heretofore. The Lord recompense thy work, and a full reward be given thee of the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings thou art come to trust. Then she said, Let me find favor in thy sight, my Lord, for that thou hast comforted me, and for that thou hast spoken friendly unto thine handmaid, though I be not like unto one of thine handmaidens. And Boaz said unto her, At mealtime come thou hither, and eat of the bread, and dip thy morsel in the vinegar. And she sat beside the reapers. And he reached her parched corn, and she did eat, and was sufficed, and left. And when she was risen up to glean, Boaz commanded his young men, saying, Let her glean even among the sheaves, and reproach her not. And let fall also some of the handfuls of purpose for her, and leave them, that she may glean them, and rebuke her not. So she gleaned in the field until even, and beat out that she had gleaned. And it was about an ephah of barley. And she took it up and went into the city. And her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned, and she brought forth and gave to her that she had reserved, after that she was sufficed. And her mother-in-law said unto her, Where hast thou gleaned today, and where wroughtest thou? Blessed be he that did take knowledge of thee. And she showed her mother-in-law with whom she had wrought, and said, "The man's name with whom I wrought today is Boaz." And Naomi said unto her daughter-in-law, "Blessed be he of the Lord, who hath not left off his kindness to the living and to the dead." And Naomi said unto her, "The man is near of kin unto us, one of our next kinsmen." And Ruth the Moabitess said, "He said unto me also, Thou shalt keep fast by my young men until they have ended all my harvest." And Naomi said unto Ruth her daughter-in-law, "It is good, my daughter, that thou go out with his maidens, that they meet thee not in any other field." So she kept fast by the maidens of Boaz to glean unto the end of barley harvest and of wheat harvest, and dwelt with her mother-in-law. Then Naomi her mother-in-law said unto her, "My daughter, shall I not seek rest for thee, that it may be well with thee? And now is not Boaz of our kindred, with whose maidens thou wast? Behold, he winnoweth barley tonight in the threshing floor. Wash thyself, therefore, and anoint thee, and put thy raiment upon thee, and get thee down to the floor. But make not thyself known unto the man until he shall have done eating and drinking. And it shall be, when he lieth down, that thou shalt mark the place where he shall lie, and thou shalt go in and uncover his feet, and lay thee down, and he will tell thee what thou shalt do." And she said unto her, "All that thou sayest unto me, I will do." And she went down unto the floor, and did according to all that her mother-in-law bade her. And when Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of corn. And she came softly and uncovered his feet, and laid her down. And it came to pass at midnight that the man was afraid, and turned himself, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. And he said, "Who art thou?" And she answered, "I am Ruth, thine handmaid. Spread therefore my skirt over thine handmaid, for thou art a near kinsman." And he said, "Blessed be thou of the Lord, my daughter, for thou hast showed more kindness in the latter than at the beginning. Inasmuch as thou followedst not young men, whether poor or rich. And now, my daughter, fear not. I will do to thee all that thou requirest. For all the city of my people doth know that thou art a virtuous woman. And now it is true that I am thy near kinsman. Howbeit, there is a kinsman nearer than I. Tarry this night, and it shall be in the morning, that if he will perform unto thee the part of a kinsman, well, let him do the kinsman part. But if he will not do the part of a kinsman to thee, then will I do the part of a kinsman to thee, as the Lord liveth. Lie down until the morning." And she lay at his feet until the morning. And she rose up before one could know another. And he said, "Let it not be known that a woman came into the floor." And when she came to her mother-in-law, she told her all that the man had done to her. And she said, "These 6 measures of barley gave he me, for he said to me, Go not empty unto thy mother-in-law." Then said she, "Sit still, my daughter, until thou know how the matter will fall. For the man will not be in rest until he have finished the thing this day." And Boaz said unto the elders and unto all the people, "Ye are witnesses this day that I have bought all that was Elimelech's, and all that was Kilion's and Mahlon's of the hand of Naomi. Moreover, Ruth, the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, have I purchased to be my wife, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance, that the name of the dead be not cut off from among his brethren and from the gate of his place. Ye are witnesses this day. And all the people that were in the gate and the elders said, We are witnesses. So Boaz took Ruth, and she was his wife. And when he went in unto her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bare a son. And the women said unto Naomi, Blessed be the Lord, which hath not left thee this day without a kinsman, that his name may be famous in Israel. And he shall be unto thee a restorer of thy life, and a nourisher of thine old age. For thy daughter-in-law, which loveth thee, which is better to thee than 7 sons, hath borne him. And Naomi took the child, and laid it in her bosom, and became nurse unto it. And the women her neighbors gave it a name, saying, There is a son born to Naomi, and they called his name Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. Isaiah. And there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of the Lord, and shall make him of quick understanding in the fear of the Lord. And he shall not judge after the sight of his eyes, neither reprove after the hearing of his ears. But with righteousness shall he judge the poor, and reprove with equity for the meek of the earth. And he shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips shall he slay the wicked. And righteousness shall be the girdle of his loins, and faithfulness the girdle of his reins. The wolf also shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, and the calf, and the young lion, and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. Matthew. Jesus went forth and saw a great multitude, and was moved with compassion toward them, and he healed their sick. Now I'll read correlative passages from Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures by Mary Baker Eddy. Spirit, God, gathers unformed thoughts into their proper channels and unfolds these thoughts, even as he opens the petals of a holy purpose in order that the purpose may appear. Trials teach mortals not to lean on a material staff, a broken reed which pierces the heart. We do not half remember this in the sunshine of joy and prosperity. Sorrow is salutary. Through great tribulation, we enter the kingdom. Trials are proofs of God's care. Spiritual development germinates not from seed sown in the soil of material hopes, but when these decay, love propagates anew the higher joys of spirit, which have no taint of earth. Each successive stage of experience unfolds new views of divine goodness and love. The wintry blasts of earth may uproot the flowers of affection and scatter them to the winds, but this severance of fleshly ties serves to unite thought more closely to God. For love supports the struggling heart until it ceases to sigh over the world and begins to unfold its wings for heaven. To happify existence by constant intercourse with those adapted to elevate it should be the motive of society. Unity of spirit gives new pinions to joy, or else joy's drooping wings trail in the dust. Ill-arranged notes produce discord. Tones of the human mind may be different, but they should be concordant in order to blend properly. Unselfish ambition, noble life motives, and purity. These constituents of thought, mingling, constitute individually and collectively true happiness, strength, and permanence. Spiritually, to understand that there is but one Creator, God, unfolds all creation, confirms the Scriptures, brings the sweet assurance of no parting, no pain, and of man deathless and perfect and eternal. Material sense does not unfold the facts of existence, but spiritual sense lifts human consciousness into eternal truth. Humanity advances slowly out of sinning sense into spiritual understanding. Unwillingness to learn all things rightly binds Christendom with chains. Love will finally mark the hour of harmony, and spiritualization will follow, for love is spirit. Before error is wholly destroyed, there will be interruptions of the general material routine. Earth will become dreary and desolate, but summer and winter, seed time and harvest, though in changed forms, will continue until the end, until the final spiritualization of all things. The darkest hour precedes the dawn. This material world is even now becoming the arena for conflicting forces. On one side, there will be discord and dismay. On the other side, there will be science and peace. The breaking up of material beliefs may seem to be famine and pestilence, want and woe, sin, sickness, and death, which assume new phases until their nothingness appears. These disturbances will continue until the end of error, when all discord will be swallowed up in spiritual truth. Befogged in error, the error of believing that matter can be intelligent for good or evil, we can catch clear glimpses of God only as the mists disperse, or as they melt into such thinness that we perceive the divine image in some word or deed which indicates the true idea, the supremacy and reality of good, the nothingness and unreality of evil. When we realize that there is one mind, the divine law of loving our neighbor as ourselves is unfolded, whereas a belief in many ruling minds hinders man's normal drift towards the one mind, one God, and leads human thought into opposite channels where selfishness reigns. When we fully understand our relation to the divine, we can have no other mind but His, no other love, wisdom, or truth, no other sense of life, and no consciousness of the existence of matter or error. Truth, spiritually discerned, is scientifically understood. It casts out error and heals the sick. Having one God, one mind, unfolds the power that heals the sick and fulfills these sayings of Scripture. I am the Lord that healeth thee, and I have found a ransom. When the divine precepts are understood, they unfold the foundation of fellowship, in which one mind is not at war with another, but all have one Spirit, God, one intelligent source, in accordance with the scriptural command. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. Undisturbed amid the jarring testimony of the material senses, science still enthroned, is unfolding to mortals the immutable, harmonious, divine principle, is unfolding life in the universe, ever present and eternal. No impossible thing do I ask when urging the claims of Christian Science, but because this teaching is in advance of the age, we should not deny our need of its spiritual unfoldment. Mankind will improve through science and Christianity. The necessity for uplifting the race is father to the fact that mind can do it. For mind can impart purity instead of impurity, strength instead of weakness, and health instead of disease. Truth is an alterative in the entire system and can make it every whit whole. We acknowledge Jesus' atonement as the evidence of divine efficacious love, unfolding man's unity with God through Christ Jesus, the way shower. And we acknowledge that man is saved through Christ, through truth, life, and love, as demonstrated by the Galilean prophet in healing the sick and overcoming sin and death. Day, the irradiance of life. Light, the spiritual idea of truth and love. And the evening and the morning were the first day. Genesis 1:5. The objects of time and sense disappear in the illumination of spiritual understanding, and mind measures time according to the good that is unfolded. This unfolding is God's day, and there shall be no night there. Let's pray together silently for a few moments, and then pray aloud together the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Let's sing hymn number 149. I'll read the second verse. And as on wings of faith we soar and worship, held by God's love above the shadows dim, hushed in the grandeur of a heart's awakening, unfolds a joy unknown till found in Him. Number 149. This church is a branch of the Mother Church, the First Church of Christ Scientist in Boston, Massachusetts. We hold Sunday services at 11 a.m. and Wednesday testimony meetings at 7:30 p.m. We also have services in Spanish, Sundays at 1 p.m. and Wednesdays at 5:30 p.m. All services are held online and in person, and all are welcome. Third Church offers Sunday school classes online and in person for children and teens. These free one-hour classes are available each Sunday. At Sunday school, students learn how much God loves them and cares for them. They also learn about the Bible characters and lessons and the healing power of prayer. For more information on times and classes, please send us an email, thirdchurch@thirdchurchnyc.com. Third Church maintains a reading room on the lower level of this building. The reading room provides a quiet place for prayer and study, and all are welcome. Here you may purchase books and recordings on Christian Science. The reading room has the latest issues of the Christian Science Monitor, an award-winning international news weekly available to read or purchase. Reading room hours are Monday through Friday from 1 to 4 p.m. The members of this church invite you to an in-person Easter talk in the church on Friday, April 7th at 7:30 p.m. Christy Hanslick will speak on feeling genuine joy in difficult times. The talk will also be streamed live in English and Spanish. Seasonal music begins at 7:15 p.m., featuring vocalists Matthew Hammond and Davia Flaherty. Childcare is free and includes a puppet show. Please visit our website, thirdchurchnyc.com, for further details. We look forward to welcoming you on Friday, April 7th. Christian Science is practical, and it heals. Our meeting is now open for all to share experiences of healing and spiritual insights that prove God's ever-presence and power in their lives. If you're listening by telephone and would like to speak, press *6 and wait until your line is unmuted. Please speak directly into the microphone of your telephone. Your message will be easier to hear if you do not use the speaker function. If you're watching via Zoom, you can choose the raise your hand icon or unmute yourself and speak.
Thank you for your readings. That story of Ruth is often in the lesson, but what's seldom in the lesson, the Bible lessons that Christian Scientists study, is the instruction that Naomi gave to Ruth to wash and anoint herself and go in the night and lay at the feet of Boaz. By our standards today, that might be shocking, but I think there are a couple of laws that applied back then that made that instruction at least understandable and rational under all the circumstances. The first law would be that a woman back then could not inherit from the land of her husband, that had to pass to the male kinsman of the deceased husband. And if that, unless the woman had a son, if the woman had a son, then the son would inherit. If there was no son, the widow more or less had to rely on the kindness of her kinsmen, her nearest relatives, to take care of her, because she didn't own land and often couldn't get a job, and so she was in a predicament. Remember that Moses once set aside the law for two women, the daughters of a man that died without sons, and they begged Moses to let them inherit their father's land. Why should they not have a piece of the promised land? Because their father died without sons. And Moses gave them an exception, and they did inherit, but that was an exception. So when Naomi's husband and her sons died, then whatever property rights Abimelech had was lost. Elimelech. Whatever property rights he had were lost. And Naomi had, being in Moab and in a place where she had no kinsman, was in a predicament. And the normal course that a widow takes under those circumstances is to go back to live with a kinsman. And that's what Naomi was going to do. The second law that was current back then, and seems strange to us now, is there was the part of the kinsman. If a woman married and her husband died without leaving her any sons, she could, there was a sort of a duty of the next closest male kin to marry that widow. So, you could have more than one wife. And that's the third law that applies here. And that, you remember Naomi says to her daughters-in-law, what, am I going to have more sons in my womb for you, that you can marry? Because that was the part of the kinsman. Had Naomi had another son, that son might have had the part of the kinsman to marry these widows. Orpah and Ruth were widows without sons, and they would have the part of a kinsman if Naomi had another son, but she didn't. So it would be normal for Naomi to say, look, you're widows, you don't have sons, you go back to your family and let them take care of you. That was the normal course of events. And Ruth wouldn't have it, and she was devoted, and so she set out with Naomi, and they were going to take care of her as best she could. Risky business. Ruth was leaving her kinsmen and the people that she might expect to support her, and going to this new land where it was sort of totally dependent on Naomi's kinsmen to take care of them. So now apply this to the story. When Naomi told Ruth to wash herself and anoint herself and lie at the feet of Boaz, what was happening was that was an invitation for Boaz to take the part of the kinsman. Of course, and you'd say, well, why didn't Naomi, if Elimelech was Boaz's brother or close kinsman, why didn't Naomi go to Boaz? Well, how old was Naomi? She had her sons, and it says that Ruth and Orpah were had been married for 10 years. So, Naomi may not have been fertile anymore. And what's the point of the part of the kinsman for an unfertile widow? But Ruth was maybe 30 or so, or could be, it's hard to know, but probably fertile. And so Naomi instructed Ruth to seek to motivate Boaz to take the part of the kinsman. and marry her and give her a son. Because if he would do that, then that son would take the property rights of Elimelech. And that son could, and because Naomi and Ruth would be taking care of the son, they'd have the property effectively as guardians, the right to the property, and they'd be in a much better position to survive and prosper. So, and look, Boaz, when he saw Ruth at his feet, understood the context of what this was. She was asking him to exercise the part of the kinsman and marry her. And he was a very virtuous guy. I mean, it was still risky business for her to go in and lie down at the feet of Boaz. She had no guarantee that he would not exploit the situation and refuse to marry her. And this could really ruin her reputation and make things much worse for her than they were before. But he was a virtuous guy. And he respected Ruth, and he knew she was a virtuous person. He was very impressed with the selfless way she left her own family that might have taken care of her and devoted herself to Ruth. And by following Naomi's instruction, she was being selfless and obedient. She understood the context. She knew the risks. She knew the law, and she knew that this was the best chance Naomi had to get Elimelech's land, and she was willing to put herself in a position. And that's why, and Boaz, knowing the rules, say, listen, I understand the situation, but I'm not the closest kin. I don't have the first right. And before I can take the part of the kinsman, I've got to be sure that somebody more closely related to Elimelech doesn't want this. And so, Naomi says, when she hears how Boaz reacted, say, sit still. He's going to resolve this issue today. And Boaz went to the closest kinsman and said, I would like to take the part of the kinsman, and I'll pay you for it, the right. And the other guy says, fine. So in all this, it wasn't as shocking as it seems today by our standards, and it was still gutsy on Ruth's part. She was putting herself out there at risk, but she was claiming a law, trying to unfold a law in a way that would advance Naomi, to whom she was totally devoted. And one can't hear this story. And of course, the other part of the story is that Obed, is it the son of Ruth? Obed is the father of Jesse, who's the father of David, and which is wonderful, good. And Dave, and of course Joseph, who married Mary, was of the house of David, and that was why he had to travel to Bethlehem to pay the tax that imposed by the Romans, and so this was sort of the coming of Jesus and the Christ, the whole unfoldment, all the good that took place in that story of Ruth and the conception of Obed. You've got to see the presence of God, the unfoldment, the good qualities that Ruth had, the courage, the selfless love, and also the love of God. She was leaving the gods of the Moabite people, and accepting the God of the Israelites. And wow, that was, not only did she love Ruth, but she was loving the God of Israel. And in this context, unfolds the coming of the descendants of David and Jesus. And it was, and goes to your readings on unfoldment. This was an example of unfoldment. So it's a lovely story, often told, and I'm glad that you fleshed it out.
Thank you for the exposition.
Thank you very much for the readings. And since we're on this subject, I thought I might put my 2 cents in. Mrs. Eddy says, no human pen nor tongue taught me the science contained in this book, and neither tongue nor pen can overthrow it. How powerful this book, Science and Health, is that we read here tonight and on Sunday. It's powerful. When I was single in the city here, I was very lonely, and there were no prospects. And out of desperation, I took the chapter on marriage and science and health, and I said, well, look, I'm not married, and at least I can dream about it. So I'll take the chapter, and I memorized it. Within a year, I met a gorgeous blonde, class-taught Christian Scientist who insisted that I marry her, and I did. Shortly after that, maybe a few years later, we moved out of the city. I was invited back to a party with some friends of mine I hadn't seen for a while, because you kind of lose touch when you get married. And one woman, a lovely woman, but wanted so much to be married, but nothing was happening. And it was sad. And so at the party, she just came up to me when I was alone. She said, how did you meet your wife? And I said, I memorized the chapter on marriage. And just to make the point clear, I rattled off the last page of the chapter right in front of her, right then and there. She didn't say a word. She just smiled very sweetly and walked away. And I didn't see them. Then maybe a year or two later, I went to the church. It was 8th Church, and I went to the church for a service with my wife. And she came up in the lobby afterwards and said, stay here. Don't go anywhere. And she introduced me to this man who was a prince. He was incredible. And then the two of them just walked out the door down the sidewalk. And I said, what's with them? And he said, well, he's not a Christian Scientist, but he's open to it, friendly towards it. And he's just crazy about her. Wow, I said. I didn't see him for a few more years. And I was one time I wandered into the city. I was having lunch at a coffee shop with a friend. I said, whatever happened to that girl and the guy? Well, they got married. They bought a house in New Jersey, and they have a family and a house. I said, well, how could that happen? I mean, that's crazy. How in the world could something like that happen? He said, well, nobody couldn't figure it out either. But one night, she got up and gave a testimony how she went to a party, and she asked a friend how he met his wife. And he said he memorized the chapter on marriage. So she went home and memorized the chapter on marriage, and that's how she met her husband. This is a powerful book. Thank you.
Thank you. This is probably better than Match.com. Thank you.
Thanks for the readings. The part of the story that talked about Ruth going into another country that was not her own reminded me of a testimony of when I was, well, let's see, when I had, my kids were, I guess, about a year old and 8 years old. We had the opportunity to travel to France for their first time. And and we were pretty excited about it. We'd planned for it for a long time, and we had some friends who are French who live in Paris, and we're been invited to stay with them. And so on the and in their house, it was had these sort of cement walls that did not absorb sound whatsoever, and my daughter was waking quite a bit during the night. Normally, back in the States, she slept just fine through the night, but ever since we arrived there, she would wake up 3 or 4 times during the night. And the wife of the family, it took her usually an hour to go back to sleep. And so every time my daughter woke up, it woke up the wife of the family. And after about 2 nights, and she had to work all day the next day. And so at a certain point just before the 3rd night, she said, we've been looking forward to having you guys stay with us for a week, but I think if things don't adjust, then you're going to have to find somewhere else to stay. And we couldn't really afford to stay in a hotel. So that was the plan, was to stay with these friends. And so that night, my daughter woke up at one point, and I sort of, rushed her down into the kitchen, as far away from everyone else as possible, and sort of comforted her. And she, and the thing that I started praying about was I started realizing how, and our flight on the way over there had been delayed and all kinds of different things like that. It had been pretty dramatic. And so one of the thoughts that had occurred to me was that I had made sort of a big deal about our first trip, as with these kids over to France. And I started thinking about how we're all in God's kingdom, and how there are no geographic borders in God's kingdom. And as you know, if you look at planet Earth from space, you don't see these little lines between, France and Germany and things like that, that God actually knows no borders. And the metaphor that came to mind was that, if I'm standing in this room and I walk over to the other corner of the room, I don't start saying, "Hey, look at me, I'm over in this corner. Wow, isn't this such a big deal? Wow, this is so exciting." We just go to the other side of the room, and it's no big deal. And I realized that, when I got a clearer grasp of the kingdom of heaven and God's kingdom, I realized that there's really no need to make such a fuss about going from one side of his kingdom to another side of his kingdom. And and with that, my daughter fell right to sleep in my arms, and I was able to put her down, and she slept the rest of the night and the rest of the trip. And it was never an issue after that. And we ended up enjoying our stay. And but to this day, it's always been a helpful reminder to just realize that that it's all the kingdom of God's creating, and I don't need to make a big deal about going anywhere in it. So thanks.
Thank you. Let's close the meeting with singing hymn number 197. Now sweeping down the years untold, the day of truth is breaking, and sweet and fair the leaves unfold of love's immortal waking. Number 197.